The sun was beginning to set over the wide Texas plains, painting the horizon in shades of gold and rose. The fields of tall grass swayed gently in the evening breeze, and the faint smell of dust and sage filled the air. It was the kind of sunset that made even the hardest days seem softer, and for a brief moment, everything felt quiet and endless. Samantha Hart sat on the worn wooden fence by the edge of her father's ranch, her hands wrapped around a chipped enamel mug of coffee gone cold. The fading sunlight caught in her hair, turning the loose brown strands into a halo of copper. She wasn't thinking about the view, though. Her eyes were fixed on the dirt road that wound toward the horizon, the one that never seemed to lead her anywhere different, no matter how far she traveled down it. She'd always known she wasn't the kind of girl people wrote songs about. Not like her sister, Clara, with her golden curls and easy laugh, or her friend June, who could walk into a room and turn every head without saying a word. Samantha was quiet, practical, and plain. The kind of girl who knew how to mend a fence, saddle a horse, and stretch a dollar. That was good enough for ranch work, but not, she thought, for anything else. She sighed and took another sip of the cold coffee, feeling the sting of the wind on her cheeks. Somewhere behind her, the barn door creaked open. Heavy boots sounded on the dirt, slow and deliberate, each step familiar. She didn't turn. She didn't have to. She knew that walk better than her own heartbeat. Figured I'd find you out here, drawled a voice, deep and lazy, touched with that warm western accent that seemed to roll like the hills themselves. She smiled without meaning to. You always do, Luke, she said softly. Luke Daniels leaned against the fence beside her, the boards creaking beneath his weight. His hat was pulled low over his eyes, shadowing the sharp angles of his face. He was all dust and denim, with sun-browned skin and hands rough from years of hard work. He had a kind of quiet strength about him, not the kind that shouted, but the kind that never had to. For a while, neither of them spoke. The crickets began their evening song, and a hawk circled high above them, gliding effortlessly on the wind. Luke pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his tousled blonde hair before glancing over at her. You been out here all afternoon? He asked. Most of it, she replied. Just needed some quiet. Something bothering you? She shrugged. Nothing new. He studied her face for a long moment, and she could feel his gaze even though she wasn't looking at him. He had a way of seeing right through the walls she tried to build. It was both comforting and terrifying. After a moment, she whispered, almost to herself, I'm not pretty, you know. The words slipped out before she could stop them. They hung in the air, soft and fragile, like dust motes catching the last light of day. Luke turned toward her, but she didn't meet his eyes. Her fingers traced the edge of her mug, her nails chipped, her skin rough from work. Everyone always says nice things, she went on, her voice trembling. But I see the way people look at me. Or don't look at me. I'm not one of those girls who turns heads or makes a man stop in his tracks. I'm just plain. The silence stretched between them. She wished she could take the words back, wished she hadn't said them out loud, because saying them made them feel real. And real hurt more than imagined. Luke let out a slow breath, then said, quietly but firmly, that's fine. Samantha blinked, startled. That's fine, she echoed, turning to look at him for the first time. He met her gaze, his blue eyes steady and unflinching. Yeah, he said, as if it were the simplest truth in the world. That's fine. She frowned, confused. You don't understand. I do, he interrupted gently. You think being pretty is what makes someone worth something. But it ain't. Not out here, and not to me. He leaned his elbows on the fence, looking out at the open land stretching endlessly before them. Pretty don't fix a busted saddle. Pretty don't stay up all night nursing a sick calf. Pretty don't keep fighting when everything's going wrong and the whole world's telling you to give up. He turned back to her, his expression softening. You do all that, Sam. You've got grit. You've got heart. That means more than any pretty face. Samantha felt something catch in her throat. You're just saying that to make me feel better. Luke gave a low chuckle. You ever known me to say something I didn't mean? She couldn't help but smile a little. No, she admitted. You're too honest for that. He tipped his hat back on his head. Then believe me when I tell you, I don't give a damn whether folks call you pretty or not. You're the one I'd ride 50 miles in a dust storm to see. You're the one I'd trust to have my back when the world's fallen apart. That's what matters to me. Her eyes burned with tears she hadn't expected. She looked away quickly, blinking them back. You make it sound so easy, she murmured. It is, he said simply. When it's true. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the world turned to twilight. The air grew cooler, and the first stars began to appear, faint and shy against the fading light. Samantha sat there quietly, feeling the weight of his words settle into her heart. No one had ever said anything like that to her before, not with that kind of quiet conviction that left no room for doubt. After a while, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. You really mean it? He looked at her, and there was a small, crooked smile on his lips. I ain't much of a liar, Sam. You know that. She laughed softly, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. Yeah, I know. They sat there in the growing darkness, the sounds of the ranch drifting around them, the soft lowing of cattle in the distance, the chirp of crickets, the creak of the fence as it settled. The world felt still, like it was holding its breath just for them. Luke finally stood, stretching his back. Come on, he said, offering her his hand. You've been sitting out here long enough. Let's get you some supper before your daddy thinks I've let you starve. Samantha hesitated for a moment, then slipped her hand into his. His grip was warm, steady, calloused from years of hard work, a hand that had built fences, broken horses, and carried her when she'd been too tired to walk. As he helped her down from the fence, she looked up at him and said quietly, Thank you. For what? He asked, adjusting his hat. For seeing me. He smiled, that same small, honest smile that had a way of reaching his eyes. Always have, Sam. Always will. They walked back toward the ranch house, the porch light glowing softly in the distance. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of mesquite and the faint echo of a coyote's cry. The stars above them were brighter now, scattered across the dark sky like sparks from a fire. Samantha felt something shift inside her, a quiet, steady warmth that replaced the ache she'd carried for so long. She realized that maybe being pretty wasn't about faces or dresses or the way people looked at you. Maybe it was about the way someone saw you when no one else did, and loved you not for what you were supposed to be, but for who you already were. As they reached the porch, Luke paused and looked back toward the horizon one last time. You know, he said, the sunset looks different every night, but it's always beautiful in its own way. Never tries to be something else. Just is. Samantha smiled, understanding what he meant without him having to explain. Guess people are kinda like that too, she said softly. He nodded. Exactly. And for the first time in a long while, Samantha felt at peace. She didn't need to be the kind of pretty the world talked about. She had her own kind, quiet, strong, and real. And standing beside Luke under the wide Texas sky, she finally believed that was enough. That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, she stepped out onto the porch again. The stars shone bright above the plains, and the world was wrapped in silver light. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, letting the peace of the land fill her. Somewhere in the distance, she heard the soft nicker of a horse and the whisper of the wind through the grass. She smiled to herself, remembering his words. That's fine. And somehow, it truly was.